Dr. Oke Kechiku joins us next. He is the Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, here we are.
Good morning. Good morning.
Right, but taking a look at how the country and where it is headed, I mean, many are already saying, glimmer of hope, that indeed we can pull together. But from what you've seen and some of the steps that are being taken, because already we see people talking about 2023, but there is today. So we need to address the challenges of today to enable us get to that time where they think we will. But give us your impression of what you see playing out and how or where we should be headed.
Well, you spoke of people seeing a glimmer of hope. I don't know in what direction they are looking and they are seeing this glimmer. That's point number one. Number two, if you look at all the indices, there is insecurity, but more importantly, there is poverty. The volume of ungoverned spaces and ungoverned territories in Nigeria is increasing. Loyalty to government is declining. The number of disgruntled groups and individuals is increasing. And the security agencies are overstretched, particularly the military. Because if you look all over the country, in most border towns, in the cities, you find that soldiers now mark checkpoints. And you ask yourself, how many soldiers do we have? Do we have enough to even deal with the northeast such that you can spare some for the roads? So I am not quite sure I see the glimmer being spoken of. And talking about 2023, there are what you might call predisposing conditions to make the future feasible. What are you working towards in 2023? The Boko Haram flag came up in Niger. Abducted students are still held. Some are still being killed. By the record from Sentinel yesterday, 174 people died within last week. And so if you extrapolate that and assume that every week is 174, of course it's more, multiply that by 52 weeks, you see that if there is a glimmer of hope, I'm yet to see it. But if people think that because things are the way they are, they should spend all their time condemning the government and running our country down, it will not take us anywhere. We face an existential threat which we should all take seriously, because as it is today, nobody really knows what to do. So in summary, talking about what I see is confusion that the government appears not to know what to do about, overstretched government agencies, a focus on meetings and consultations, the illusion that speech-making can deliver leadership and governance. And also, you notice, some people have called for a state of emergency. Let us suppose a state of emergency is declared on national security. What will that deliver? Will it increase the number of soldiers we have? Will it change the fact that they don't have ammunition to fight? So, glib statements, which are mistaken for solutions, are actually adding to the crisis. Others are calling for a review of the national security architecture. Sit them down and ask them what they mean by it. This is a studio that belongs to Channels Television. If the studio is not functioning well, you might find that it has more to do with the behavior of people than with the structures in the place. So if you say change the architecture, what do you really mean? Change the command structure? What is it? So the further confusion arising also from jumbled government communication only takes hope away. And the real issue is that you now find larger and larger swaths of the Nigerian population unable to feel that they are citizens and therefore believing that self-help might be the solution. And it would appear that government reflexes as well as the communication from government is not creating enough, if you like, reason for comfort. So there's growing reasons, compelling reasons, in fact, for greater pessimism, if you ask me.
I was actually referring to some reactions that came through as a result of having heard Muazu Magaji. Some persons thought, well, they didn't know that those kind of views actually existed coming from the quarters which he represents. So that's in that respect. But when you then talk about self-help, people almost get into that stage. Then the questions to politicians. So as things stand now, what kind of measures or steps from the leaders or followers do you think should be done to avoid that kind of scenario? Because look, the thing is, if people are pushed to the wall, you know what they say about he that is down needs fear no fall. So what should be done and from where, if we could describe them as the low-hanging fruits that we could leverage on?
Sorry, probably on a mischievous note, talking about he that is down needs fear no fall. It doesn't mean he shouldn't fear anything at all. He should fear ant bites. He should also fear being stepped upon. Now, people are down and are being stepped upon. So that saying, I don't know whether it still enjoys the original validity. When we ask the question, what should government do? It gives the impression that there's one action or series of action which is like a light switch. Once you turn it on, then all the problems are solved. No. Poverty has taken over most of the North. If you look at the schools where abductions have taken place, and in the states, all of them have been running education budget for the last 20 years of democracy. They've been also the previous governors. We've had publications of their achievements in education. And you go there, the schools are in terrible states of disrepair without many of them protective walls and the rest of it. So first, when there is no government, people begin to rely on themselves. When much of government expenditure is on workers, and I put workers in inverted commas, and you find that the population of workers in the state is less than 200,000, but the bulk of the budget goes to them, you then find that actually the bulk of the population is not within that net, which of course has impact for taxation. That's not our concern at the moment. What should the government do? The federal government has a poorly equipped security
That's okay. If you could just hang on a minute. Just from that point, what should the government do? We'll take it from there when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Well, yeah, Dr. K, that's an element, at least the parents, good to see and hear that they are back with their families. But you were going to make a point about what should the government do? Please go ahead.
Well, let me first rejoice with the parents. It's really not easy to have the absence of a child for not just one day, but for a long time, and in the hands of people who could kill them. So I can imagine their relief. And I think we should all join them in thanking the Lord for the release of the children. Now, in the matter of what the government should do, let us also get a context so that the enormity of the problem will be clear. In November, I was in Chad, in N'Djamena, at the headquarters of the multinational giant task force comprising Nigeria, Cameroon, and I think Chad and Niger. And there were meetings with the local communities and their traditional rulers. The emerging facts show very clearly that the government is actually, of all the countries, in trouble. They pointed out that sometimes the armed services would come in, actually drive out the Boko Haram people, or because the business of the military is not to run communities. The absence of government, the absence of civilian presence in terms of amenities, makes them vulnerable again once the soldiers go. So they design a containment strategy. They do not cooperate with the soldiers. They cooperate among themselves. They conceal information. And those of them who can pay a small amount to go to their farms have created a symbiotic relationship there. So the first thing to do is to get the governments, state governments I mean, to realize that this war against Boko Haram will not end for as long as the governors think that it's okay to govern only part of their states. Secondly, there are stakeholders in every environment. The meetings you hold in Abuja, does it really involve them? Governors have come, they've met with the president, and they're thinking of how to solve the national security problem. How does that drill down to the local communities? So let them get the stakeholders close together. Let them confirm what the problems are, which is the fact that the place is ungoverned, there's no infrastructure, they are not in touch with their local government chairmen or their representatives, both at state and federal levels. So why are we asking what the government should do when there is actually no government, when there's actually nothing close to them that indicates government? When you have an increasing population of beggars, and then every year budgets are run. So these are the concerns. That in asking what the government should do, we are pretending that there is one magic action that needs to be taken. No. Progressively, we are moving towards a sharing of palliatives and giving things to refugees in refugee camps. That is taking the place of what the state administrations should be doing. So at the federal level, the arms you said you went to procure, where is it? Make it available. I think there will be need to increase the recruitment of soldiers. That will not solve the problem in the short term, but it will in the long run.
You know,
create actual security buffers. Act on intelligence, because it still remains a moot point whether the Chibok abductions would have taken place if government had acted, or those who should act had acted on the information provided. So a disruption, total disruption of the governance framework is responsible for what we are seeing, and that has to be addressed. On top of all that is the need for some communication that indicates government sensitivity. You hear nothing from the president. Minority leader, I think the Senate caucus spoke about that yesterday. This pattern cannot continue. Giving ultimatum, the service chiefs have been directed to ensure this and that. What does that mean really in real terms? When you say you're going to declare a state of emergency, will a state of emergency provide ammunition or provide training, or remove the fact that people are no longer loyal to the state, or remove the fact that the highways are not safe, or remove the fact that persons in leadership positions are distracted by their own people? No. So this government has to rejig itself. And when I say this government, I mean the government in power, the political leadership of other parties, and the elder statesmen who make up the Nigerian National Council of States. It's
speaking
not a
about
Buhari matter. Yes, there has been some, in my view, substantial display of incompetence, more than the previous government, which was not particularly exceptionally competent. But this is
speaking
the time
about
for a consensus. So our roof is collapsing.
Speaking about the governors, I think they will have, a lot of work to do in terms of regaining the confidence of the people, especially when they remember those palliative distribution at the time when the warehouses were raided. People were actually disappointed. They thought, if these leaders couldn't share as little as those little packages to them, how do we then expect them to do greater things, maybe in the realm of protecting lives and property? But the example of the statements made by Niger State Governor, from the examples that you've equally painted about...
After the abductions, yeah.
Yeah. So what is it can that example apply, and how in Niger State, especially when he says they hoisted the flag, they're coming with sophisticated weapons? What can he do, especially when they say, look, we don't control those security agencies, they take instructions from Abuja? What can they do in that regard?
My first question would be, do you have security meetings in Niger State, as it's supposed to happen in other states? If there is, SSS, police, and all other military and paramilitary formations ought to be part of that. So the question to the governor will be, were you getting intelligence, and what were you doing with it? Were you relaying it and it wasn't being acted upon? That's at one level. At the second level, you have images of the schools attacked. How were they looking? Were they looking like proper schools? Thirdly, how could Boko Haram overrun the place, come in up to the point of actually mounting a flag, if not for the fact that the place is thoroughly under-policed or not policed at all? So you see that the matter of blame cuts across several divides. There's a blame to the federal government that the country is not being governed, and then that of the state. So my take on the Niger thing is, that flag is there because it is unchallenged. That flag could be hoisted there because the spaces around and before the school and around the areas where it is standing was ungoverned, has now become ungovernable. And if you recall, that flag did not occur on the first incursion of the bandits. It was after it had become like routine, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They go here today, they go here in the next place, and so after some time they mounted the flag. The position of the governor, I recall seeing the video where he was really talking on TV, very distraught. We'd been telling the federal government, but they've not been doing anything about it. But you see, even the choice of words, suggest some exculpation for him. That, oh, you know, the federal government is not doing anything. I've been telling them to do something. What are you doing for those who elected you? How many times have you gone to your own state house of assembly and said, my dear people, in the name of those you're representing, I've come here to tell you that I've raised this matter. These are the challenges. Nothing is being done about it. So grandstanding on television is not governance. The federal government is not doing enough, in my view, across all fronts, economic, human capital, infrastructure, but it doesn't remove the fact that the state governors, most of them, are carrying on as if they are kindergarten school children who from time to time come out to cry, and then you go and give them what they want. Take the case of Niger State. Let the governor be interrogated. Sir, what is it you've been doing as governor in the last 1 year, in the last 2 years? As governor, yes, you've been governing. Tell us what happened during the COVID period. Tell us what happened when attempts were made to deal with poverty. Those are the kind of questions that should arise. He's not coming out on national television or grandstanding before the media. As an elected governor, I have a duty to secure that space. Yes, I'm hamstrung. I'm not in charge of the security of the area, but I have monthly security votes. This is how I've deployed it. And each time I refer to cases of people who were seen to have used security votes in ways that made sense. Peter Obi as governor. First, he scaled down the security vote he inherited by more than 50%, and then deployed it to local communities, bought them patrol vehicles, made sure they carried out their functions. So it was domesticated, it was transferred to the people, because in every environment, you know who doesn't belong. Now, have they scaled down security votes in the states where there's confusion? No. And they are complaining about federal government all the time? No. You see, without saying there's nothing wrong at the federal level and there's massive volumes of things that are wrong, we must apportion blames appropriately so that people develop the right sense of responsibility, so that citizens also understand that Abuja is not part of their community, that they have ward chairmen, they have council chairmen, they have local government chairmen, they also have members of the State House of Assembly, members of the House of Reps, whom they all elected as well as their governor. These are the things, that's when democracy will then take root. That's when security will become organic. People with guns cannot secure any place if the place is dominated by irresponsible civilian leadership.
Speaking about the citizenry, are we doing enough holding all of them from local government level to the top, the president, accountable to us, the people? Or are we so divided or so impoverished that we can't even pull together and ask those questions of the authorities across board?
No, it's no longer easy to ask those questions, because rather than ask the questions, what you now find is that different pockets of disgruntled persons and groups set up shop and begin to talk about their rights. They're increasing in number. If you listen to the narrative of IPOB, you may not like the fact that he's talking about dismemberment of the nation. But you also cannot ignore the fact that most of the issues it raises about marginalization of the Southeast has substance. If you then go to the Southeast and look at the reflexes of the governors as a group, you ask yourself, do they have a common position on anything? You go to the North, if you remember during the EndSARS riot, the Northern governors came out to take a position in support of SARS, without asking themselves whether SARS is actually rendering any service they can be proud of. Because at the time they were speaking, bandits were chasing them out of their places. So that you find that the highest level of political and societal leadership, the quality of public conversation, the quality of policy analysis and what have deteriorated remarkably. Now, what's the effect of that on citizenship? Balkanization of the concept of the citizen. So that citizenship is no longer loyalty to the Nigerian state, but loyalty to whatever interest at any moment you think will be served, either by your people or that will serve your pocket and the rest of it. So talking about mobilizing the people, no. On what platform? Would you say that Arewa youths are not mobilizing, or that IPOB is not mobilizing, or that the groups in the Southwest are not? But are they mobilizing in the name of the Federal Republic? Is the narrative of the governors creating a sense of national unity and cohesion? The answer is no. So the citizen is demobilized from responsible citizenship because of the absence of genuine governance. That is part of the crisis. And that is why, if I'm a state governor, I'll be concerned about reigniting that conversation in my state. Because in the end, every politics is local. There is no voting booth, no polling station on the internet, or on Instagram, or on Facebook. They're always local. And there's no amount of abuse or insult to the federal government in the papers, on TV, on the internet, by sitting governors that will change the fact that they must contain their own space. There are governors who have demonstrated some control. And that is not because they took over the police or the army in the area, but that they created group consensus. They were able to bring people together and say, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't take care of this place, we die. What can we do? That's the sort of thing that should be happening. Okay. Then progressively, the concept of the citizen might return. Right now, it's all right during national events to talk about patriotism, to praise Nigerians. It's all right to see a Nigerian who is doing very well in Harvard, or is the best footballer and praise him, or the one who has won a music award. The truth remains that that youth you're celebrating has become what he is before the rest of the world in spite of Nigeria, not because of Nigeria. Whereas our goal, our desire would be for them to be what the world sees them to be because of Nigeria. So mobilizing the citizen now, with poverty and hunger, with jobs gone, with close to 40% of companies that were functioning in 2015 no longer in existence, no. And with population of beggars growing every day, such that even in some parts of Kano now, you cannot go and pick from any dustbin you like because there are those who have custody of it. Is that progression? These are the issues to consider. And it's all over the country. It's not about the North.
Dr. Kichuku, so many things that you've said, very, very, jaw-dropping, if I can say. But there was something you said earlier about social interventions, and I don't know how we can go about that, because over the past few days, you would see on the front pages of the newspapers, and the facts are actually there, that many of the states are broke. That's on the one hand. In fact, there is a report in the papers earlier in the week that some states can't pay their debt in 50 years. You say the other time, and you've also talked about the dustbin analogy now, that many people are very, very hungry. There is a high level of poverty in the land. The unemployment figures are there. And you talk about social interventions and how significant they can be. Seeing that the states, according to the reports that's everywhere, are broke and the figures are not very, very favorable, how then do you think we can begin to approach these social interventions, especially at the time when the CBN says they got to start paying back their debts?
Well, first of all, if the states are broke, the question to ask them is, what did you spend your money on? That's the first question. And really, one duty of a medical doctor to a patient is to be honest. If you have a terminal condition, the best thing is for you to be told and told how to manage it. Anybody who saw the reflexes of the ruling elite 10 years ago would know beyond doubt that we are going to come to a situation like this. And watching also the reflexes of the current government, it was easy to see that it was going to come faster. Now, all the monies, leave the states first. All the borrowings by the federal government, what has it gone into? Consumption. In my place, they say if you borrow money to take a chieftaincy title, something must be wrong with you. You marry more wives on borrowed money, take a chieftaincy title on borrowed money. How are you going to sustain the regalia after the ceremonies? Those are the issues. The country has also gone into very huge debts on consumption, distributed in the name of poverty alleviation, trader money, what do you call the other one? Cash transfer, and so many other things. They are eaten. Now, has the Federal Office of Statistics told us that there's a decrease in poverty because of the trillions distributed? The answer is no, because it hasn't gone into wealth creation. It has gone into consumption, some of it capital consumption. So that's at the federal level. Then in respect of the states, these states that are owing money they cannot pay in 50 years, the records are there. Go and check what they are spent on. Overhead. Political, what do you call it? Political, what's the word for it now? Patronage and the rest of it. So the time for accountability is beginning to dawn on us. Also, it's not just a question of political leadership. The people, to an extent, have a share in the blame because you gave me money and I voted for you. You sold me your birthright and your future up front for 4 years. Whatever happens to you, you're partly responsible for it. It is quite possible that the events that are going to come, lined up, cascade of calamities actually, might induce some reflection and compel people to begin to take informed decisions about their future. I do not see the silver lining people are talking about. I'm not pessimistic. I'm only saying that when a child decides not to read his books, he will fail. The lesson of failure will make him take his or her studies seriously when he's in class with those who should be his or her juniors. Bringing that onto the political plate in terms of the debt and the crisis on the table, it is self-deception for anybody to come on TV and give you a solution. Solution to a political environment where lopsided appointments have made a section of the country to practically withdraw faith from the federation, where expenditures are shooting through the roof, where there's a perception of a conscious design to wipe out possibly a part of the country, where there's no rail line in the southeast, but there's one going to Chad, where social infrastructure has been terrible for 20 years, PDP years, APC years, where people are busy abusing Buhari without noting the fact that it wasn't remarkably different before him, only that it got worse, and that he appears less sensitive than other equally incompetent people before him. Those are the issues on the table. So talking about silver lining, I don't know the meaning of silver, but I know that silver lining suggests hope. There might be people who are seeing hope. Such people, I believe, are looking for some short-term quick fixes, something government will do to show up its image, give some money here and there, announce a new committee. I don't see a short-term solution because the elite itself is not changing any of its reflexes, spending pattern, number of vehicles, expenditure on overhead, expenditure on security votes, privileges, and the rest of it. And that's where the money is. Have you heard National Assembly people talking about a reduction in their entitlements? Have you heard them saying we will now make sure we hold consultations in our states once every month? I don't.
Well, I guess those are some of the issues too that needs to be focused on a lot more, because if they're asking us to tighten our belt, we need to see that example. But we do thank you for your perspectives this morning, Dr. Oke Ikechukwu, Executive Director, Development Specs Academy.